This morning or last night, I don't know exactly when the message came in, there was a message from a brother named Simon Ghasi Harijan. He is a first generation Christian in a very unfriendly state to Christianity, that is Orissa. And his message was basically, pray for me as I am traveling with my sister to Samuel B. Thomas's place. So I asked him, what is it regarding? And he said, I'm taking my sister there so that she could do the household help, be the household help. And then I asked him, how are they? Do you have any idea? And that's when he forwarded Samuel Thomas's message to me, message to him, says, her surgery is next month. Please help us. We are helpless. And that's why Simon's sister is going there to help that family. I don't know the details of the surgery. As I passed on that message to John, that's where we are today. And again, in Orissa, there's one church particularly that was established by a Keralite brother who was a secular employee of some work, and he was also a minister there. And he had actually purchased a piece of land, and he donated half of that to the assembly there, because that assembly was gathering in the evangelist's house. It's all in small rooms, and people were going from one room to the other to sit down. So in some little way, we also shown some fellowship, and that brother used to send updates in terms of pictures quite often. And all of a sudden, about 4 weeks ago, the pictures stopped coming. So from groundbreaking, all construction, and so after a couple of weeks, I reached out to him, and what happened to the construction? Said it stopped because everything is so expensive and we have no money. So that's how I am connected with Simon, who happens to be from the same assembly. So they all undergo tough situations in terms of trying to serve the Lord, and they can't even open an account in the bank in the name of the church, because there are anti-conversion laws passed in that state. And it's a tough situation for them to raise funds even. Anyway, I'm just saying this for prayers. Last time I spoke from this platform, it was on a Wednesday. I think I mentioned the story of Moses hitting the rock when Israelites complained about water. I want to continue with that same topic for a little more explanation. As we all know, this is one of the most intriguing and perplexing stories of Bible, as there are many. It says one thing, and we often wonder, can it be this way or that way? The reason why I say this is Moses was denied the opportunity to enter the land of Canaan as a result of hitting the rock when he was commanded to actually speak to the rock. The context of that story is when the Israelites left Egypt almost 40 years ago. Moses was 80 years old, and Miriam was probably 6 years old or 86 years old. Miriam's name is associated with Mar, which we know Mara is bitterness. And also they say the Hebrew word for water is Maim. So the combination of these two words actually forms Miriam, and it is also supported by the history much more than what we know from the concise version given to us. The 86 years of suffering, that was the worst part of the slavery in Egypt. That's what they say. And it started when she was born. So she was 86 and Moses was 80 when they left. And this chapter 20 of Numbers starts with the statement, "Then the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Sin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh. And Miriam died there and was buried there." Verse 2, "Now there was no water for the congregation." Somehow they say Miriam is always associated with water. I don't know the whole explanation of that, but the name suggests her name has water in it. And also we see Miriam standing at the edge of the river Nile when Moses was floating in that little boat. And she was responsible for bringing Moses' mother to take care of Moses when Pharaoh's daughter pulled him out. Anyway, for the 39 years or so, they had no problem with the wilderness, problem with water. When Miriam died, they had another problem with water. Why I say this, they had a previous issue with water in Exodus 17 and verse 16 or 6, when they just got out of Egypt. Within the first month of their journey, they were in a place and there was no water. And this was not the first time that Moses had experienced this kind of situation. It was the second time. And the first time we see in Exodus that he was asked to hit the rock. And the Lord said, "I will stand on that rock before you, and you hit the rock, and water will come out." So this was not the first time that Moses ever experienced this kind of a situation. So we don't have the whole time to read the entire thing, but I will read Numbers 20, verse 8, and a few verses there. "Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together. Speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and give drink to the congregation and their animals." So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock?" Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their animals drank. And then comes the bombshell. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not believe me to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them." That was I already said this, so we'll just go through this. In Exodus 17:6, we read there, "Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it." Last time also I mentioned the difference between the two. One thing says water will come out of it, and the other one said it will yield its water. There is a difference in the usage there. And we know the verse in 1 Corinthians 10:4, "And all drank the same spiritual drink." This is Paul writing to the Corinthians. "For they were drinking from a spiritual rock which followed them, and the rock was Christ." We must have read it thousands of times, and we spiritualize it by saying a rock which followed them. Spiritually, yes, that is true. Christ was there with the Israelites. But there is also the ancient Jewish history that says, think about it this way, 39 years, there is no record of any water problem in the traveling of Israelites. And the entire time they were taking rounds in the wilderness, in the desert. How come they had water? That's not 1 or 2 or 100 or 300 people. That was about 3 million people. And how come they never had water? Doesn't say that everywhere they had, water sources. The ancient Jewish history says there was a rock that followed them for the entire 39 years until Miriam died. And it was giving them water. We may think, water came out and they were filling buckets and feeding. It's impossible to feed 3 million people and their animals and cattle by somebody giving it, unless it is accessible to them to drink. That's the truth of it. It's all miracles. The entire 39 years of or 40 years of their life in the in the wilderness is all about miracles. The miracle of the pillar of cloud, the pillar of fire, their clothes not getting degenerate, their sandals not wearing down. They got manna from heaven. They got water like this we talked about. They got meat. Everything was miraculous. And that's the story of the wilderness. Anyway, as I mentioned last time, this is the Hebrew word. It says in Exodus 17:6, the word used is sur, hasur. And in Numbers 28, that the portion that we just read, the word used is Selah. Both in English translation is translated into rock, but the Hebrew word sur, whenever it is used, when it is associated with God Almighty, all-powerful, Elohim, Hasur Elohim, and the rock of our salvation. The rock is through and through, in and out, is hard rock. Can be written as they are expressed, and there is meaning behind this. They are big into numerology and so on and so on. That's a very complicated thing. It says this Selah word has Mayim inserted into it, and they say there is water inside that rock. And Moses was asked to speak to the rock, and it says it will yield its water. Anyway, questions of this thing. If Moses was supposed to speak to the rock, why was he asked to take the rod? Then, why was he asked to speak? Once he hit the rock, water came out. Why should this time a separate instruction, a different one? Then he was asked to speak, but then why did he hit it? Not once, twice. Again, it was such a nice thing for him to do. He produced water. Was it such a serious crime that he would be denied the opportunity to enter into the land of Canaan? How does it compare with Moses breaking the tablets when he came down from Mount Sinai with the tablets which God prepared and inscribed with his own hand? The second time Moses had to make one. What did he do? He just broke it. Was it a serious crime that Moses did? Wasn't he punished at that time? And is this a bigger crime than that? And then the last and final question, if this is such a serious mistake, hitting it instead of speaking, why did it work so well? There was enough water for all 3 million and the cattle. It was so wrong that he was denied the opportunity to go into the land of Canaan. But it worked very well. So it doesn't add up. That's why I raise these questions. Moses in Psalm 106, verse 32 and 33 says, they also provoked him to wrath at the waters of Meribah, so that it went badly for Moses on their account. Because they were rebellious against the Spirit, he spoke rashly with his lips. Because he says, he was not asked to say, here now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock? Even then, is it such a big crime that he would be denied his life desire? All that he desired was to go into the land of Canaan with, he says, am I your mother? Because he was carrying them like mother. But again, I'll probably share a secret with you why he broke the tablets, they say, because his people had sinned. And Moses coming down, he broke the tablets and said, if you want to kill me first. I have committed a bigger crime than them. Get to me before you get to them. I don't know whether it is true, but it looks like he's saying, I'll do a bigger one. Then you punish me first before you kill my people. He was so much attached to them. Then it says, if you had spoken, you would have sanctified me. If you had spoken, it would have been something about me, the Lord says. And there was an opportunity to trust and sanctify. Anyway, I think I have caused enough confusion about this topic. I think I asked this question already. Why Moses needed the rock if he was supposed to only speak to the rock? There was a purpose in which Lord asked him to take the rod. Did Moses misunderstood the purpose of his commandment, take the rod? That was the sign of authority, or his. Right from the beginning, he used the rod to divide the sea. All the miracles that he did before Pharaoh. It was a sign of Lord, that Lord is with him. Did he misunderstand his purpose that, I have the rod, so I have to use it? Was that the reason why he used it twice? I'm asking, falling into the persuasion of the circumstances. Circumstances so ugly there, people are going to stone him, and he's just persuaded to use the rod that he has in his hand. The other thing is, sometimes we also fall into the same situation, that a solution that once worked, we tend to use it again and again and again without knowing who the people are, what the circumstances are. See, again, you shall strike the rock and water will come out, was Exodus 17:6. And in Numbers 28 it says, you and your brother Aaron assemble the congregation and speak to the rock before their eyes. Aaron was asked to be with Moses and speak. Moses was asked to take the rod, but there was no instruction for Moses to use it. And again, as I pointed out earlier, yield its water. Now we come to understanding the story in the quickest possible way. What does the rod and hitting teach? The first time, as I said, Sur, the rock, hard rock, there was no water inside it. He was asked to hit the rock. Whatever you do, the rock is not going to give you water by its own nature. The Lord is saying, beat it into submission, and it will produce what I, the Lord, say it needs to do. There is nothing inside It's such a miracle. It's such an impossible thing. That's where the Lord comes into picture. So it's the rock you need to produce water. And that is being hit. And it goes against its nature and gives water. It's an absolute miracle. There were many other miracles listed and unlisted in Deuteronomy 32:13. Read the last portion. And he had him suck honey from the rock and oil from the flinty rock. In all these things, the Lord is asking them, those things, inanimate objects, to do something which is completely against their nature. We often say rain falls down and steam goes up. Why? It's a laws of nature. Laws of nature. Who puts forward those laws? Who has created those laws? Who set those laws? Why can't water just fall upwards? Are we saying it is the Lord's will that the water should fall down because of gravity? And what is gravity? Who created gravity? Does animals and inanimate objects obey God? Look at fire, wind, clouds, rain, rock, sun and moon. Amos 9:6 says, the one who builds his upper chambers in the heavens and has founded his vaulted dome over the earth, he who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the face of the earth, the Lord is his name. What is it saying? The biggest surface area where water evaporates in the world, all around the circle of the world, is from the seas. Imagine if the water evaporates into the stratosphere or whatever and then forms clouds and then it just falls down when it is cooled. What is going to happen? The whole earth will be facing a drought. Then how do we get rain? At the right time, the winds come in and they just take away all these clouds and spreads them all into the land. And the next thing you know, the rain falls on the land and finally flows down into the sea. There are so many things happening around us. That's just one example. If the winds were never there, we probably would never get rain on the face of this earth because the water that is evaporating from the earth is so little. And we don't think about it. The wind takes those clouds from above the sea, brings it on the earth, and rains on us. And who orders that? Who makes it happen? The Lord is his name. Go home and read Psalm 104, Psalm 148. It lists every creation on the face of this earth saying, they all do God's will. The electrons and the protons and the atoms, and they all dance around in their fixed shells or whatever that may be. No one is ordering them to do it except the Lord has already ordered that. If they don't follow those rules, there will not be anything that we can live on. Let's think about the bees. One bee finds the nectar in one flower, and the next thing is they say bees start dancing. And then 20 of them come around, 100 of them come around. They all collect the nectar and converts that into honey, not for themselves. Everything in this universe that is you see, including the rocks and the wind and the fire, is actually doing God's will every moment of time. always, without stopping. A bee doesn't have to wake up in the morning and come to West Fifth and listen to a message to inspire them to do what they do. They just get up and start doing what they are created to do. They have no gender fluidity or confusion about who they are or nothing. Rocks just sit around in the wilderness for hundreds of years, and that's what they are intended to do. And the birds wake up in the morning and they have no confusion about what they need to do. They just do their thing. The only people who have a confusion about who they are is us. Why is it so? Because we don't know who we are. The essence of the whole thing is, I think I'm running out of time. Let's ask, what was the lesson God wanted the people to learn from the rock before they go into, something mishap. I wouldn't say Moses failed or anything. But something happened which, Moses will be there with us, with all of us. What was the lesson? They were going, as I said earlier, from the land of miracles into the normal life. And they needed to be taught a lesson that everything in this world, in this universe, is doing God's will. That's why Lord asked Moses to speak to the rock, and it will yield its water. But again, Moses did hit the rock twice. It produced water. And the language that is used there, twice with this rod, and water came out abundantly. It was supposed to yield its water, and if Moses had asked it, God would have probably recorded, the rock yielded its water. But it is recorded, water came out. The question is, you have something inside you. You have a trademark. You have your brand. And that's what the Lord wants. But this water probably that came out was just like any other water. But by motivating them, even the rock is doing God's will. Just like, as I said, everything nature is fulfilling not because of compulsion, not because of any coercion, but they just do it because who they are. And they are doing it joyously. They desire. Every moment of their life, they just want to do God's will. They don't need to be told or forced. Internally, they are motivated based on who they are or what it is. Miracles represent a way, a remedy for an immature world, immature person, or a mindset. Basically, external stimuli, like the road, propel me to do the will of God. The rock did, the first time and the second time. It went against its nature because a miraculous thing that the Lord did in them. The Lord wants us to produce our water, our potential, the authentic us, to have a relationship with God, and He wants us to constantly be desirous of doing His will alone. The question we would ask is, do we have in us, to rise to the desires of our Creator? If we are who we say we are, then we would definitely do His will. As I said, water came out abundantly. It doesn't say the rock gave its water. The Lord wants our water. Again, the last thing I would address is, was Moses punished? Moses will be there in heaven. In his eternal kingdom, Moses definitely has maybe a much more significant position than any one of us can claim. probably, how much Moses loved his people. And the Lord gave him an opportunity to stay with those who died in the wilderness. That was his people. And one day when the Lord is going to call them, Moses and his people will probably rise up and be there because he's loved them so much. So maybe our understanding about Moses was punished, we can look at it this way as well. Anyway, in the whole thing, my point is, do we know who we are? And if that is the case, the Lord wants us to do His will, which is our will, aligning our will with God's will, and we will glorify Him much more. Father, we thank you. Thank you for the time that you allowed us to meditate from a portion of your word. You have given us potential and you want us to live a life that is pleasing in thy sight. Father, help us to align your will and our will may become one, and that we will do what you want us to do. We commit